Hello, survivors. Thanks for joining us today. Before we begin, if you enjoy our stories, please subscribe to the channel. It really means a lot. Also, tell us in the comments which city you're listening from. It's great to see how far our community reaches. Now, let's start the story. It started with latency. Milliseconds at first, barely noticeable unless you were looking for it, like a tiny stutter in the otherwise smooth flow of data across the backbone. I'm Leo, and I spend most of my life looking at that flow, coaxing, sometimes diverting it, mostly just trying to make sense of the digital ocean. That Tuesday morning, the ocean felt choppy. Pings to my usual overseas servers were taking just that fraction longer. Packet loss ticked up by 0.0-something%. Background noise in the system, usually. My apartment doubles as my command center. A controlled mess of monitors, servers humming quietly in a cooled rack, cables snaking across the floor like metallic vines. Outside the grime-streaked window, the city was doing its usual impersonation of organized chaos. Traffic flowed, sirens wailed intermittently, the normal urban heartbeat. I was debugging a particularly nasty piece of corporate firewall code for a gray market client, the kind who paid well for plausible deniability and didn't ask about my methods. My focus was absolute, fingers flying across the keyboard, lost in the elegant, frustrating logic of the code. Then the chatter started, picking up on the fringes, not on the mainstream news sites. Those were still full of political squabbling and celebrity gossip. It was the deeper channels, the encrypted forums, the sysadmin back channels where the real-time pulse of the infrastructure could be felt. Server admins in Philly reporting entire network segments dropping offline without explanation. Hospital techs in Chicago complaining about comms blackouts and weird system errors, locking down patient records. Whispers of aggressive patients, violent incidents overwhelming ERs. Standard urban legends? Maybe. But the volume was unusual. Too many disparate reports coalescing around the same theme. I ran a quick diagnostic script, checking major network hubs. Latency was definitely increasing, especially eastward. Packet loss wasn't just ticking up anymore. It was jumping. Something was stressing the system, something big. I pulled up a few public traffic cams for downtown. Gridlock. Worse than usual rush hour, and it was only mid-morning. Ambulances and police cars seemed to be struggling through the morass, lights flashing, but the overall movement was glacial. Strange. Maya, or rather her handle Nick's Bite, pinged me on our secure channel. You seeing this weirdness? East. Coast hubs are getting hammered. Yeah, I typed back. Latency spikes, packet loss, seeing traffic cams locked up in Boston, NYC. Philly just went dark. Like whole city ISP routing seems fewbarred. Getting reports, weird shit. Violent patients, bioterror scare. Hearing the same, I replied, my unease growing. Could be infrastructure attack. DDoS maybe? Feels different, Nix typed. More chaotic. Less targeted. Getting ghost pings from CDC internal network monitors I had backdoors on. Nothing major, just activity. The CDC. That snagged my attention. I had my own feelers out. Legacy code from past explorations of government networks. Mostly dormant listeners designed to alert me to specific keyword traffic or unusual security protocols activating. Nothing fancy, just tripwires. My system remained silent. Still, the mention of the CDC coupled with the hospital chatter. Then the first official alerts hit. Vague. Civil emergency. Shelter-in-place advisory. Reports of localized violence. The kind of boilerplate language designed to prevent panic while revealing absolutely nothing. But the sheer number of alerts cascading across multiple cities simultaneously was unprecedented. My phone buzzed. A frantic text from my sister, Clara, who lived across town. Jake, what's going on? Seeing crazy stuff on the news. Before I could reply, the message failed to send. Network busy. I tried calling. Fast busy signal. Landline, dead dial tone. Okay. This wasn't a drill. This wasn't a network outage. This was something breaking systemically. My apartment, usually my connected castle, suddenly felt like a cage. The sounds from outside were changing too. The distant sirens were now a constant frantic wail, joined by shouting, car horns blaring incessantly, and then, unmistakably, gunfire, sporadic pops at first, then longer bursts. Nix pinged again. Lost my CDC back doors. Looks like they triggered a network kill switch. Something big is def going down. That was it. The trigger. If the CDC was hitting the panic button, pulling, their own plug, then whatever this was, it wasn't just riots or a localized incident. They were trying to contain something. Information. Or maybe something else. My hacker instincts, honed over years of digital cat and mouse, kicked in overdrive. When someone slams a door that hard, it means they're desperate to hide what's behind it. And I needed to know what that was. Not just out of curiosity anymore, but out of a dawning sense of self-preservation. Information was survival. Forget the corporate firewall. This took precedence. Accessing secure government networks wasn't like the movies. It wasn't frantic, typing and flashing access-granted screens. It was slow, methodical patience, finding vulnerabilities, exploiting 0 days, navigating layers of intrusion detection systems, covering tracks. It was a digital chess game against unseen opponents with vastly superior resources. But today, the chaos was my ally. Emergency services, government networks, they'd be overloaded, protocols stressed, attention diverted. Cracks would appear. I started with FEMA's internal network. They'd be coordinating the response, sharing data with other agencies, including the CDC and likely DoD. Their security was decent, but built for disaster management, not necessarily a high-level targeted intrusion during said disaster. I used a cascade of proxy servers, bouncing my connection through servers in Reykjavik, Seoul, Buenos Aires, masking my origin point. Found an older vulnerability in their secure VPN authentication protocol, something I'd bookmarked months ago but never had reason to exploit. It was still there, sloppy, or maybe they had bigger fires to put out. I was in, root access, not the crown jewels, but deep enough to start looking. System logs showed frantic activity, encrypted comms channels buzzing between FEMA regional headquarters and something designated USAMRIID. That was Fort Detrick. Biological warfare research. My blood ran colder. Cross-referencing internal FEMA bulletins with timestamps from the news reports. The timeline was tight, but suggested FEMA knew something was up before the public alerts went out. Maybe only by an hour or two, but it was there. Foreknowledge. I started searching file directories, looking for keywords. Outbreak. Pathogen. Quarantine. Contagion. Most files were standard emergency preparedness stuff, hurricane plans, earthquake responses. Then I hit a restricted directory. Deeply nested, flagged with a classification level I hadn't seen before. Umbra Sierra. Access denied. Standard permissions wouldn't cut it. This needed escalation. I deployed a custom rootkit, one designed to exploit a kernel-level vulnerability in the specific server OS they were running. It was risky. Detection chances were higher, but time was running out. Outside, the sounds were getting worse. The moaning was closer now, interspersed with sharp guttural shrieks. A heavy thud echoed from the street below, followed by shattering glass. My building's security wasn't great. A simple intercom and glass front doors. The rootkit worked. Privileges escalated. Umbra Sierra yielded. Inside, only a handful of files, all heavily encrypted with military-grade algorithms. Most were small, likely situation reports or comms logs. But one was large, nearly a gigabyte. Dated today, timestamped just after midnight. Fill in name, ZC Proto 01, final deployed, PDF Enco, ZC. Zombie containment, Protocol 1, final deploy. My fingers trembled as I initiated the decryption sequence. routing the processing through my own server rack to speed it up while simultaneously setting up data sniffers to monitor for any signs of intrusion detection. Focusing on my activity. This file felt important. Maybe the file. The decryption was slow, layers peeling back agonizingly. Outside, the gunfire was closer, more sustained now. Automatic weapons, military, National Guard, or just heavily armed citizens. I risked another look out the window. The street was a battlefield. Figures swarmed an overturned police car, tearing at it. Further down, soldiers in formation were firing into a crowd of the infected, but the line buckled as some soldiers were overwhelmed, dragged down. The decryption progress bar hit 90%. My system flagged an alert. An internal FEMA security demon had noticed the unusual file access. An automated response, maybe, but they knew someone was poking around Umbra Sierra. 95%. Another alert. External traffic attempting to trace. My outermost proxy in Iceland. They were reacting faster than I expected. 99%. Come on, come on. Decryption complete. ZC Proto 01 Final Deploy, PDF. The file opened on my central monitor. Not a text document. It looked like a presentation. Slide deck combined with technical appendices. Official seal, Department of Homeland Security. Bioweapons Containment Directorate, BWCD, an agency I'd never even heard of. Title slide, Project Nightfall, Final Containment and Sterilization Protocol. My breath hitched. Sterilization. I scrolled frantically. Slide 2, Threat Assessment, VEX 113 Pathogen. Origin, Presumed Laboratory Escape, Cross-reference Project Chimera, USAMRID. Note, Plausible Deniability Protocols active. Public narrative, Novel influenza variant. Transmission, Saliva, blood, CSF fluid. Bite primary vector. Airborne inconclusive but suspected under specific conditions. High concentration in closed space. Incubation, rapid. 15 to 60 minutes post-exposure, dependent on bite location, severity. Symptoms. Stage 1, 15 to 60 min. High fever, aggression, paranoia, loss of higher cognitive function. Stage 2, onset post, Stage 1 clinical death. Cessation of cardiac respiratory function followed by reanimation of brainstem. Subject retains basic motor control. Exhibits extreme aggression. Cannibalistic tendencies drawn to living humans. Subject designated ZC, zombie contaminant. Physiology, ZC, non-reliance on oxygen, respiration, extreme pain tolerance. Motor, controlled degrades over time, estimated 72 to 96 hours. But aggression remains. Termination requires destruction of brainstem, code, headshot. Okay. Standard zombie stuff, terrifyingly confirmed. But the origin, Project Chimera, USAMRID, this was lab-made, and the government knew. I scrolled faster. Slide 5, Initial Containment, Phase Alpha. Objective, limit initial spread, assess vector, protect key personnel, assets. Actions, media blackout control, narrative severe flu, riots. Activation of emergency alert system, shelter-in-place directive. Deployment of National Guard to establish QZs, quarantine zones, around primary outbreak loci. List appended, Chicago, Philly, Boston, Atlanta, LA, the list went on. Critical. QZs are containment, not rescue. No extraction authorized. Shelter-in-place wasn't advice. It was a tactic. Keep people boxed in, easy targets. I felt sick. Clara, she lived downtown. Had she gotten the alert? Was she dutifully locking her doors, waiting for help that wasn't coming? Slide 7, Secondary Containment, Protocol Nightfall, Activation Criteria, MET 08 or EST. Objective, prevent VEX 113 spread beyond major metropolitan QZs. Eradicate infection within QZs. Acceptable civilian losses prioritized below national security imperative. Action 1. Perimeter control. Establish hard military cordons around QZs. Appendix. B. Cordon maps, engagement rules. Terminate any unauthorized exit attempts, living or ZC. Use of lethal force authorized. Action 2. QZ population reduction. Initiate systematic sterilization within QZs. Primary method, nest teams. Neurotoxin exposure and saturation tactics. Deploying aerosolized agent sanguine. Properties rapid neurodegeneration in living humans. Accelerated decomposition in ZC biomass. See Appendix D. Secondary method, high-density zones. Limited thermobaric ordnance. Authorization SECDEF codeword ashfall. Timeline, Phase 1, perimeter, 12-24 hours. Phase 2, sterilization. Commence hour 24 post-nightfall activation. Estimated completion, 72 hours. Sterilization. Population reduction. Acceptable civilian losses, agent sanguine. Thermobaric ordnance. They weren't trying to save the cities. They were planning to erase them. To burn out the infection along with everyone trapped inside. My sister. Millions. Of others. All designated as acceptable losses. Slide 10. Information control and counterintel. Objective. Maintain designated public narrative. Suppress contradictory data. Neutralize internal leaks, external breaches. Action. Full spectrum. Comms monitoring. Active network defense protocols, Project Cerberus. Deployment of hunter-killer cybersecurity teams targeting unauthorized access, dissemination of Nightfall data. Priority target profile. Anomalous access to Umbra Sierra classification. My kind. Screen flickered. A new alert, more aggressive this time. Intrusion detected, origin trace initiated. Cerberus active. They knew. They knew I had the file. They were coming for me digitally first, but maybe physically too. I slammed my laptop. Shut, severing the hardline connection. Too late. They were already inside my network, bypassing the proxies. My own servers started whining, activity lights flashing erratically. They were trying to wipe my drives, fry my hardware. I hit the physical kill switch, cutting power to the entire server rack. Silence except for the sounds outside and the frantic pounding of my own blood in my ears. I scrambled to my main workstation, yanking the Ethernet cable, switching to a heavily encrypted, air-gapped backup drive where I dumped a copy of the ZC Proto-01 file the instant decryption finished. Rule 1 of hacking. Always have a backup. Always have an escape route. But where could I possibly escape to? The file was a death sentence, not just for the cities, but for me. I knew the truth. I knew the government's horrifying plan, and now they knew I knew. The infected outside were a mindless threat, predictable, in their hunger. The real monsters were the ones who wrote this protocol, the ones who deployed Agent Sanguine and thermobaric bombs on their own people, the ones now hunting me through the digital ether. I grabbed my go bag, burner laptops, drives loaded, with cracking tools, basic survival gear, a hefty power bank. I checked the boarded-up window facing the alley. The screamer was gone, but more infected shambled below. The street out front, visible through the inspection camera hole, was worse. A pitched battle seemed to be raging a few blocks away. Tracers lit up the sky, the sound of heavy machine guns echoing between buildings. No escape that way. My apartment building had a fire escape accessible from the window in my spare room. It led down into the alley where the screamer had been. Risky, but maybe less risky than waiting for Cerberus or Nest teams to arrive. The ZC protocol file had maps, cordon lines, projected timelines for Agent Sanguine deployment. It showed the military checkpoints weren't safe zones but funnels. It showed the planned sterilization sectors. Clara's apartment was right in the middle of one scheduled for Phase 2 commencement plus 12 hours, less than 36 hours from now. I had to get to her. I had to get us both out before they started gassing the city. The file was horrifying, a burden, almost too heavy to bear, but it was also a map. A map through hell, maybe, but better than stumbling blind. I slung the go bag over my shoulder, picked up the heavy wrench I'd used earlier, my only real weapon, and took one last look around the dim, quiet apartment that had been my world. Outside, the city burned and screamed. Inside, the silence was broken only by the frantic thumping of my own heart. The first day of the zombie outbreak was ending. For me, the first day of being hunted by both the living and the dead was just beginning, armed only with the terrible truth I'd found in a classified government file. The fire escape groaned under my weight, rust flaking off onto my hands. I moved slowly, testing each rung before putting my full weight on it. Below, the alley seemed empty. Shadows pooled deep and menacing around the overflowing dumpsters. The earlier sounds of the infected feast were gone, leaving only the distant cacophony of the city tearing itself apart. Where had the screamer and its followers gone? The uncertainty was almost worse than seeing them. Reaching the bottom, I dropped the last few feet, landing silently on packed dirt. The wrench felt heavy in my hand. I scanned the alley. Clear. The entrance opened onto a side street, quieter than Main Street had been. Debris littered the pavement. Trash, abandoned shoes, dark stains that I didn't want to examine too closely. I pulled up the hood of my dark jacket, trying to blend into the shadows. The file. ZC Proto 01. It wasn't just data. It was a death warrant for millions, and a hunting license for me. Cerberus. The name implied a guardian of the underworld, a multi-headed beast guarding secrets. They wouldn't just be tracing my connection, they'd be looking for me physically. My face was likely already flagged on every traffic camera, every facial recognition system still operational. My digital ghost was out there, and they were hunting it. My first priority was Clara. Her apartment was about 40 blocks away, across town, through areas the file had already marked as heavily infected or soon to be cordoned. The map overlay in the protocol showed projected ZC migration patterns based on population density and, predictive modeling of panic response. They'd game theorized the apocalypse. The safest route, ironically, seemed to be cutting through a designated Phase 2 sterilization zone that wasn't scheduled for treatment for another 30 hours. Fewer living people meant fewer stimuli to draw the infected, and the military wouldn't be actively purging it yet. Hopefully. I moved quickly, sticking to alleys and side streets, crossing main thoroughfares only when absolutely necessary, and only after careful observation. The infected were numerous, but scattered in these less populated areas. Their behavior was consistent with the file's description, drawn to loud noises and fast movement, poor eyesight especially in low light, but a terrifyingly acute sense of smell or some other sense that homed in on the living. I learned quickly to move slowly, use cover and control my breathing, masking my scent as much as possible with the city's grime. Twice I had close calls. Once rounding a corner, I almost stumbled into a small group of 3 ZCs tearing apart a stray dog. I froze, melting back into the shadows, thankful their attention was elsewhere. The sounds were horrific. Another time, a lone infected, an old woman in a bathrobe shuffled out of a dark doorway directly in front of me. Her head snapped up, cloudy eyes fixing on me, a low moan starting in her throat. I didn't hesitate. The wrench connected with her temple with a sickening crunch. She went down silently. No wasted movement, no noise. Destroy the brainstem. The file's cold instructions echoed in my head. This was the new reality. As I navigated the increasingly devastated streets, the file's details kept replaying in my mind. Agent Sanguine. Accelerated decomposition in ZC biomass. That explained the cloying, sweet rot smell that permeated the air, distinct from simple decay. It wasn't just the dead, it was the dying dead, being chemically broken down. And the nest. Teams, neurotoxin exposure and saturation tactics, that meant gas. Gas designed to kill the living quickly, silently, within the cordoned zones, before the thermobaric cleanup. Clara was breathing that air, trapped in a zone marked for systematic extermination. I checked the encrypted, hardened laptop from my go bag periodically, powering it on only briefly in deep cover, careful to ensure no wireless signals were active. I pulled up the cached copy of ZC Proto-01. Appendix B, cordon maps. They were tightening the noose around the city center faster than the initial timeline suggested. Major bridges were already marked red, confirmed impassable, likely guarded, or destroyed. Subway tunnels were flagged as compromised, flooded, or infested. My planned route to Clara's needed adjusting. A flicker of movement in a dark shop window. I ducked behind a burned-out car. Peering cautiously over the hood, I saw not an infected, but another survivor. A young man, maybe early 20s, armed, with a baseball bat, scavenging inside a looted convenience store. He moved with a desperate urgency, stuffing water bottles and canned goods into a backpack. Should I approach him? Share what I knew? The file warned against unauthorized dissemination. Cerberus wasn't just digital. The protocol implied field agents tasked with neutralizing leaks. Was this guy a survivor or bait? The paranoia the file induced was crippling. I decided against contact. In this world, knowledge was danger, and trusting anyone was a potentially fatal mistake. I slipped away, unseen. The sky had turned a bruised purple as night fully descended. The fires. Downtown cast an eerie orange glow, reflecting off the low clouds. The sounds of the city had changed again. Less frantic screaming now. More sustained gunfire, heavy explosions, and the constant pervasive moaning of the ZCs. I reached the edge of the zone where Clara lived. According to the Nightfall Protocol map overlay, this area was heavily infected, but not yet actively cordoned for sterilization. Her apartment building was a typical mid-rise, maybe 10 stories. The front entrance was shattered glass, the lobby dark. No lights in any of the windows I could see. Was she still there? Had she tried to flee? My heart pounded. I circled around to the rear alley where the fire escape was. This was our old emergency plan, drilled half-jokingly years ago after watching too many disaster movies. Using the same stealthy ascent as before, I climbed the fire escape. Her apartment was on the 6th floor. As I neared her window, my foot dislodged a loose piece of metal. It clattered onto the landing below. I froze, listening. A low moan echoed from the alley below. An infected, drawn by the sound. Then another. I had to get inside fast. Her window was dark. I tapped softly, using our signal. 3 quick, 2 slow. Silence. My blood ran cold. "Clara," I whispered, pressing my face close to the glass. "Clara, it's Leo. Are you there?" A faint shuffling sound from within, then the blinds twitched. Clara's face appeared, pale and terrified in the dim light filtering from the street. Relief washed over me so intensely my knees almost buckled. She fumbled with the window lock, then slid it open just enough for me to squeeze through. "Leo. Oh my God, Leo." She threw her arms around me, holding on tight. "I thought, the phones, the news." I know. Are you okay? Where's Emma?" I scanned the dark apartment. It was intact, barricaded crudely with furniture against the main door. "She's asleep," Clara whispered, pulling me further inside. "Or passed out from fear." I gave her half a sleeping pill I had. The noises, they were terrible earlier. "We need to leave, Clara. Now. Tonight." She looked confused. "But the alert said shelter in place. The military isn't coming to save us," I said grimly, the weight of the file pressing down on me. "They're coming to sterilize the city. Everyone in it. We have maybe 30 hours before they start deploying gas in this sector." Her eyes widened in horror. "Gas? Sterilize? What are you talking about?" "I found something," I said, pulling the rugged laptop from my go bag. "A government file. Their plan. It's called Project Nightfall." I quietly explained what I'd found. The virus, the containment failure, the quarantine zones that were actually death traps, Agent Sanguine, the thermobaric bombs, Cerberus hunting me. Clara sank onto the sofa, shaking her head in disbelief, then dawning terror. They wouldn't, our own government? They already are, I said, gesturing toward the window. The cordons are tightening. The shelter in place was to keep people from fleeing, make the cleanup easier. Tears streamed down her face. Emma. Oh God, Leo, what do we do? Get out, I said, pulling up the map overlay from the file again. The file shows the planned cordon lines in the sterilization schedule. There's a gap, a potential exit route heading west, through the old industrial district near the river. It's supposed to be heavily infected, but scheduled for later sterilization phases. If we move now, tonight, while the military focuses on establishing the main cordons, we might slip through before they lock everything down. Through the infected? Clara whispered, horrified. It's our only chance. Staying here means waiting for the gas. I looked towards the bedroom where Emma was. We need to wake her. We need to move. Just as Clara stood up, a sound echoed from the hallway outside her apartment door. Scratching, slow, deliberate scratching, like fingernails on wood, followed by a low, wet gurgle. They were outside the apartment. They knew we were here. My presence, the scent of the living, amplified. By 3 had drawn them. We were trapped on the 6th floor, with the only way out now blocked by the very things we were trying to escape, and hunted by a government determined to erase us along with the infection. The file had given me knowledge, a potential path, but it had also made me a target, and now it had led the dead right to our door. The second night had begun, and the walls were closing in. The scratching intensified, joined by muffled thuds against Clara's apartment door. They weren't trying to break it down with brute force, not yet, just probing, testing. The sound scraped along my nerves. How many? Clara whispered, eyes wide with terror, glancing between me and the bedroom where Emma slept. Can't tell. At least 2, maybe more. I moved silently to the peephole. The hallway outside was dimly lit by the emergency lighting, flickering erratically. 2 figures stood directly outside the door, their backs partially to me. One was the police officer I'd seen earlier near the bookstore, his uniform torn, head lolling. The other was harder to make out, slumped but definitely infected. More shapes moved in the shadows further down the hall. They weren't packed together, just milling, drawn by our presence but without focused aggression. Yet. Okay, I breathed, stepping back. They haven't pinpointed us exactly. Just know something alive is in this section. We stay quiet. They might eventually wander off. And if they don't? Clara asked, clutching her arms. Leo, the file. Cerberus. If they know you have it, won't they come here? Maybe, probably. The thought sent a fresh wave of cold through me. Cerberus wouldn't knock politely. They'd breach the door, silent and efficient. That's why we can't wait for these things to leave. We need another way out. The fire escape? Too exposed now. They heard me coming up. They'll be watching the alley. My eyes scanned the apartment layout. Kitchen, living room, 2 bedrooms, bathroom. Standard layout. Is there roof access? Clara shook her head. Maintenance ladder in the utility closet down the hall, but it's always locked. And the hallway. The scratching stopped. A heavy silence fell, more menacing than the noise. Then, a single loud bang hit the door, making us both jump. They were starting to get serious. The adjoining apartment, I said suddenly, pointing to the shared wall in the living room. Is it occupied? Mrs. Gable, Clara whispered. Elderly lady, haven't seen her since yesterday morning. Her voice trailed off as the implication hit her. We both knew where elderly people often ended up in these scenarios. If she turned, she might not have locked her door from the inside, and her apartment might have another exit. Maybe a balcony? It was a long shot. Another bang on the door, stronger this time. The wood creaked. We didn't have time. We need to go through the wall, I decided. Quietly. Through the... Leo, that's crazy. Crazier than waiting here, I countered, already pulling tools from my go-bag. I didn't have demolition gear, but I had a small pry bar, a multi-tool with a saw blade, and desperation. Drywall was relatively soft. The studs would be the problem. Bang! Crack! The doorframe splintered, near the lock. Okay, Clara agreed, grabbing a heavy lamp from the end table. What do I do? Wake Emma. Keep her calm. Keep her quiet. Be ready to move the second I'm through. Use the lamp if anything tries to get past me. I found the spot on the shared wall least likely to have electrical or plumbing, based on standard layouts, and started working with the multi-tool saw. It was slow, agonizing work. The blade whined softly, a sound that felt deafening in the tense silence, punctuated by the increasingly violent impacts on the apartment door. Emma whimpered as Clara gently woke her. Mommy, what's that noise? Shh, sweetie, Clara soothed, her voice trembling despite her efforts. Uncle Leo's just fixing something. We're going on a little trip. The saw blade hit a stud. I switched to the pry bar, trying to carefully chip away the drywall around it. Sweat poured down my face. Every blow on the main door sent vibrations through the wall I was working on. Crunch! The deadbolt ripped through the wood. The door sagged inward, held only by the furniture barricade and the remaining hinges. A gnarled hand reached through the gap, clawing at the air. Leo! Clara hissed. Almost there. I worked faster, chipping frantically at the drywall. I could see the hollow space between the studs now. One more section. The main door groaned as multiple bodies slammed against it. The barricade shifted. I broke through. A hole maybe 2 feet wide opened into darkness. Mrs. Gable's apartment. It smelled stale, dusty, with a faint overlay of that sickly sweet rot. Go now! Clara pushed a terrified but silent Emma through the opening, then scrambled after her. I glanced back. The infected police officer's face was pressed into the gap in our door, milky eyes rolling, jaw snapping. I dove through the hole in the wall just as the main door finally gave way with a deafening crash. We were in Mrs. Gable's living room, dark, cluttered with knickknacks and doilies. Moonlight filtered through the window, illuminating dust. Motes dancing in the air. And in the center of the room, swaying slightly, was Mrs. Gable, or what remained. Her floral housecoat was torn, skin gray, eyes vacant. She turned slowly toward us, a low moan escaping her lips. Before she could move, Clara swung the heavy lamp base connecting solidly with the side of her head. Mrs. Gable stumbled, giving me the opening. One swift, brutal blow with the wrench to the base of the skull, and she collapsed like a discarded puppet. Destroy the brainstem, the grim mantra repeated. Check the doors. Find an exit, I whispered, listening for sounds from Clara's apartment. Shuffling, moaning, they were inside now, searching. Clara fumbled with the locks on Mrs. Gable's front door. It's bolted from the inside, she must have. Balcony? I scanned the room. A sliding glass door led off the living room. Locked but easier to bypass than a deadbolted steel door. I used the pry bar on the frame, leveraging it carefully. Metal groaned, glass creaked. Outside, the sounds of the infected in Clara's apartment were getting closer to the hole in the wall. The slider popped open. Go. We slipped onto the small concrete balcony, 6th floor, too high to jump. But neighboring balconies stretched left and right, separated by flimsy privacy dividers. The apartment to the right looked dark, hopefully empty. This way. I kicked through the thin plastic divider, creating an opening. Clara passed Emma through, then climbed over herself. I followed, glancing back just as the infected police officer's head appeared in the hole we'd made in the wall. Red eyes, scanning Mrs. Gable's apartment. We moved from balcony to balcony, breaking through dividers, staying low. Most apartments were dark, silent. One showed signs of a struggle, furniture overturned, dark stains on the carpet visible through the glass door. We bypassed it quickly. Finally, near the end of the building, we found what I was hoping for. A balcony with a fire escape ladder bolted to the railing. Down, I instructed. Quietly as you can. Clara went first, holding Emma tightly. The metal rungs were cold beneath my hands as I followed. Below, the alley was still mostly empty, though the sounds of the horde attracted by the earlier noise were echoing from surrounding streets. We reached the ground without incident, melting back into the shadows. We were out. But the city was a hunting ground, the government was actively hostile, and our escape route led through the heart of the infected zone. I checked the time on a discarded watch I'd picked up. Almost 1 a.m. We had maybe 29 hours until Agent Sanguine. I pulled up the file map again on the dimmed laptop screen, cross-referencing it with my knowledge of the city. The old Red Hook Brewery, I decided, near the river in the industrial district. Scheduled for Phase 3 sterilization, gives us a buffer. According to this, it should be relatively clear of military activity for now, and the structure is solid brick, defensible. We can rest there, reassess. And then? Clara asked, her voice barely a whisper, holding Emma close. Then we find a way west, out of the QZ before they burn it. I looked at my sister, at my niece, their faces pale in the gloom. The weight of the file, the terrible knowledge it contained, felt heavier than ever. Protecting them wasn't just about avoiding the infected. It was about navigating a landscape where the designated saviors were the executioners. Hacking that file had given me a fighting chance, a glimpse behind the curtain. But it had also painted a target on my back and thrust me into a nightmare, where the rules were written by monsters both living and dead, and we were running out of time.